From what we know about movies based on video games, creative liberties are made to make them different from the source material. Some choices can be good, others can be unnecessary that it will gradually turn out bad. In 2007, a movie based on the Legend of Spyro reboot was announced, and that it was to be based on the first installment of the trilogy, A New Beginning. It had a couple of people on board working on the movie. The director, Mark DeBay, recently worked on the animated movie on Netflix, Marmaduke, and it's been known as one of the worst animated movies in 2022. John Davis, the Spyro movie producer, was also the producer of the movie I, Robot and the film adaptation of Aragon. The Altia brothers, Steve and Daniel, were assigned to write the Spyro movie script and screenplay. For those who don't know, the Altia brothers notably wrote the script for the film Norm of the North that was released years later in 2016, and they worked on several of the sequels. So you can already tell that the writing in the Spyro movie was probably going to be low tier, no offense to the Altia brothers. Mark DeBay and other members of the Spyro movie team worked on a couple of low-budget animated films, like Garfield Gets Real, Garfield's Fun Fest, The Reef, etc. The Spyro movie was said to have a budget under $20 million, so the animation very much likely would have been like those animated films seen here in terms of quality, or perhaps worse. 2 years later, after the announcement, the movie was cancelled in 2009 due to the decisions made by Activision in taking the Spyro license in a different direction. The movie apparently never got past the writing stage, and there were no trailers nor animated teasers made for it, or they were never released. Over a decade later, in 2022, the fourth draft of the Legend of Spyro 3D script was recently found by Lost Media Wiki user YoshiKiller2S, and they were given permission to share the script online. This draft of the script was finished on November 18, 2008, nearly a month after Legend of Spyro Dawn of the Dragon was released in North America. According to one of the writers, Daniel Altier of the Altier brothers, he doesn't remember any other drafts written after the fourth. Movie writers usually get contracted to write 3 or 4 drafts, or 2 drafts and a polish. So this fourth draft of the Spyro movie script here may be the closest thing we got to what the movie was going to be like. So without further ado, this is my review of the fourth draft of the Legend of Spyro movie script. A quick heads up, I will add in my input about the existing lore from the Legend of Spyro games as I go, to help you guys better understand the differences and such. The film is about a purple dragon named Spyro, who is the Dragon of Prophecy. Very much like in the original Legend of Spyro games, but without the rare purple dragon plotline. The movie starts with an elder guardian dragon named Ignitus, telling us the story about how the dragons were living out their peaceful lives among the other creatures of the land, until a villain called the Dark Master came to power. We then move to the present, where Ignitus is watching over the dragon egg that contains Spyro, who is prophesized in having untold powers and is the only one who can defeat the Dark Master. However, Spyro's egg is being hunted by the forces of the Dark Master, and Ignitus is forced to take the egg to safety while being chased. I noticed that the story starts similar to the first game, The Legend of Spyro A New Beginning, showing how Spyro was saved from death as an egg when the forces of the Dark Master were hunting for him. Instead of Ignitus informing us of the prophecies surrounding Spyro and the Dark Master's armies hunting for him, we are given a look at what life was like before the Dark Master attacked. The dragons living peacefully, no sign of war or any dark times, just a time of tranquility. In the Legend of Spyro game storyline, the dragons were locked in a war against the Dark Master and his army of apes that's been going on for hundreds of years. What I like about this part of the movie script is that we were given a look at more dragons and how life was like for them, even if it was brief. Something that the Legend of Spyro games were unable to include because of time and budget constraints. Returning to the script here. During the attack on the Dragon Temple, the ones leading the raid are elemental beasts, part of the Dark Master's army. The other guardians and dragons protecting the dragon eggs are fleeing for their lives, while some are killed off by the elemental beast. The Ice Guardian Cyril is one of the many casualties. Yes, Cyril, the ice dragon who is a prominent character in the Legend of Spyro trilogy, who taught Spyro the art of the ice element, and he's casually killed off just like that. That is a risky move on the writer's part, and an obvious creative liberty for the movie. Don't know why they felt killing Cyril off would be okay, but in my opinion, it was not the best move. Anyway, Ignitus barely escapes the chaos with Spyro's egg, but he is chased by some of the elemental beasts. In his haste, he calls upon the elusive dragonflies, who, in this movie, have an ancient allegiance with the dragons, and Ignitus gives Spyro's egg to the dragonflies to keep him safe. The elemental beasts then find Ignitus and put him out of commission, or killed him? I don't know. But luckily, the dragonflies already left with Spyro's egg before the beasts can find them. Once they were safe at their home, the Dragonfly Glen, two of the dragonflies, Flash and Luna, decide to look after Spyro's egg along with the dragonfly egg they already have. In the Legend of Spyro games, Nina was the name of the mother dragonfly, but here in the movie, she's named Luna. Afterwards, we are treated to an expected parents montage. Why? Luna preparing boobies for both Spyro and her own baby, while Flash is preparing a crib for his son and a big crib for Spyro. Don't know why they feel the need to add an expected parents montage in this script, wasting some movie time, but again, who knows. The following scene, we are given a look at the Dark Master's lair, the Mountain of Malefor, a carryover location from the game The Legend of Spyro: The Eternal Night, the sequel to A New Beginning. The Dark Master himself, and that's all he's known as in this script, is hidden in the shadows and we only see his glowing red eyes. And this is how we will see him for most of the movie script, by the way. He has a little bat sidekick named Pox, named after chickenpox, and he's a character created for the movie who desperately seeks the Dark Master's approval and wants to stay on his good side. Reminds me of a few villains who had bat sidekicks in animated movies in my childhood, like Bartok from Anastasia and Pym from Barbie and the Nutcracker. After two of the elemental beasts enter and report what happened after their attack on the Dragon Temple, the Dark Master isn't pleased that they failed to get Spyro's egg, the Egg of Prophecy he calls it. But the elemental beast did steal a dragon egg during the raid, and the Dark Master sees that it could be of some use to him. After killing off the two elemental beasts for their failure, the Dark Master sends Pox to find Spyro. Next scene returns us to the Dragonfly Glen, where Flash and Luna witness the birth of their son they named Sparx. The dragon egg they've been looking after hatches into a baby purple dragon they named Spyro. The baby Spyro and Sparx immediately bond and see each other as brothers right there and then. We are then treated to a baby's montage of Flash and Luna taking care of Spyro and Sparx. A series of scenes that includes a very unsavory and unneeded detail of Spyro's diaper change. Spyro's diaper being filled to the brim. Yes, you weren't reading wrong. It's right there in the script for all to see. I would not blame some of you for thinking the Altier brothers had a fetus thing going on, especially after reading this part of the baby sequence. The fact that this part was in the fourth draft of the movie script speaks volumes that the writers didn't see anything wrong with it being potentially added into the final movie. If this ever made it into the final film, Spyro fans would never hear nor see the end of it. I know there is much worse out there, but the fact that this was almost canon makes me glad this movie wasn't made. A time skip later in the script, and Spyro and Sparx are old enough to go off on their own, and it's mentioned that the designs they take on is what we will see of them for the remainder of the movie. Now, we never see what the characters in the movie would have looked like. All we got was a teaser poster and nothing else. So we really don't know if the design for Spyro on the poster was final or not. It may have just been an early idea for it though, since the movie never got past the writing stage. Anyway, much like in the Legend games, Spyro grew up believing he was a dragonfly, just a big purple one. He and Sparx go out on their first day of school, and it ended poorly for them. The dragonfly teacher at school tried to help Spyro learn to fly, but during his attempts to fly, the Altier brothers gave us another unsavory scene. Spyro being inflated with a garden hose that made him float in the air. Again, I don't blame you guys for thinking the Altier brothers had a fetish thing going on. They may be trying to be humorous for the children and all, but still, why did they think it was a good idea to add this in? Anyway, after the dragonfly teacher tried to help Spyro fly, Spyro wound up getting bullied and humiliated by his peers, especially by a Dragonfly School bully. Spyro and Sparx return home to find it under attacks by goblins, who were led to the hidden village by Pox after he found Spyro while he was at the Dragonfly School. I noticed that the goblins are a reference to the Gremlins from The Legend of Spyro Dawn of the Dragon, the third and final entry of the Legend trilogy. Don't know why the Altia brothers call them goblins instead of gremlins. I am also surprised that they aren't using the apes in this movie script, who were the Dark Master's followers in the first two Legend of Spyro games, and no sign of the Ape King Goal anywhere either. This draft of the script was finished after Dawn of the Dragon was released, so the Altia brothers may have added the goblins in as another creative liberty to go along with the game's release. Anyway, during the scuffle, Spyro is captured by the goblins, and he sees Sparx being threatened and his parents, Flash and Luna, about to be eaten. Spyro instinctively breathes fire at the goblins, causing them to retreat. That was rather easy. The apes put up more of a fight in the games than the goblins here. Afterwards, Flash and Luna explain to Spyro that he isn't a dragonfly, but a dragon that was given to them by Ignitus years ago to keep him hidden. But now that Spyro is found, they are no longer safe, as wherever there are dragons, there is war. Flash and Luna then consider running away with their family to find a new place to live, to protect Spyro. Of course, obviously overwhelmed by the truth, Spyro decides to run away from home during the night to protect his family and find out where he came from, without informing his parents and Sparx. This plays differently in the game, The Legend of Spyro: A New Beginning. In that game, Spyro leaves home with Sparx and his Dragonfly parents knowing of his departure. His parents supported his decision of leaving, while Sparx felt hurt that Spyro was leaving him behind. In the movie script, we are back to the Mountain of Malifor, where the Dark Master is in the process of corrupting a young dragon that was hatched from the dragon egg brought to him earlier in the story. He is then informed by his goblins that Spyro is found, but the Dark Master is displeased that Spyro wasn't captured. Instead of killing the goblins for their failure, the Dark Master has them wait at the Dragon Temple for Spyro, knowing that that is where he will go seeking for answers. The Dark Master then finishes corrupting the young dragon before him, using a red gem containing the souls of dragons, and it transforms her into an adult, powerful, and scary dragon. He then calls her by the name of Cinder, named after a fire's last gasp. Finally, Cinder has entered the story, and it's about the halfway point of the movie script too. You would think they would have introduced her sooner, because she was the main antagonist of The Legend of Spyro: A New Beginning. But with the Dark Master here in the flesh in this movie adaptation, I'm guessing that Cinder being the main villain was scrapped? I don't know. We go back to Spyro, where he awakens and goes after a family of spiders who stole his food. He is then captured by the spider family and is about to be eaten. And this family of spiders can talk. No, really, they talk. The writers didn't have to make them talk to avoid adding more additional characters, but here we are. Just as he was about to be eaten, Spyro is saved by a cheetah warrior named Hunter and taken to safety. Yes, Hunter the Cheetah is in this movie script. He notably made a few cameos in Spyro the Eternal Night, before appearing in the flesh in the last story installment, Spyro Dawn of the Dragon. I'm surprised the Altia brothers brought in Hunter so early, considering this is supposed to be a retelling of A New Beginning. And in the games, we don't personally meet Hunter until Dawn of the Dragon. Anyway, after saving Spyro from the spiders, Hunter introduces himself and knows Spyro as the Dragon of Prophecy. And here's the running gag you will be seeing for a bit in the script. Whenever the words Dragon of Prophecy is said, Hunter has to bow to Spyro on one knee, as it is a custom of his people, the Cheetahs. And this is probably a reference to the movie Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, where a tribe of natives bow whenever the name of their sacred animal, Shikaka, is mentioned. Shikaka! 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 And the Dragon of Prophecy gag drags on for a bit in the script. Soon after Hunter is acquainted with Spyro, Sparx appears and joins them after deciding to stick with Spyro, much like what happened in A New Beginning. Eventually, Hunter guides Spyro and Sparx to the Dragon Temple, where they discover remnants of dragon history and run into Ignitus, who survived his fight with the elemental beast and is now older. After a long, unnecessary scene of Spyro and Sparx running for their lives after being scared by Ignitus, they eventually calm down for Hunter to explain that Ignitus is harmless, and they are shown around the temple. And we're past the halfway point of the movie script, by the way, and we just finally have Spyro meet with Ignitus. Ignitus explains that he is the last of the Guardian Dragons, and he was the one who looked after Spyro's egg. Hold on. Ignitus is the last of the Guardians. That means Volteer, Cyril, and Terrador are all dead, killed off. Risky move on the writer's part, again. We already saw Cyril get killed off in the beginning, so the other two Guardians were killed off screen. In The Legend of Spyro: A New Beginning, the Guardians were the ones who trained Spyro on how to use the elemental powers of electricity, ice, and earth. Not only that, they were prominent characters that appeared throughout the whole game trilogy, so it feels off that they aren't there in the movie script at the moment. They aren't even mentioned by name. Ignitus then explains why Spyro is so important and how the Dark Master became evil. In the past, the Dark Master was a dragon whose power was so great that he could have been one of the greatest defenders of the land, but he chose the path to evil and used his powers to wage war on all of dragonkind. He then learned of a crystal called the Life Gem, the same gem we see in his lair at the Mountain of Malifor, and he used this crystal to capture the souls of all the dragons he killed to make himself even more powerful. Before the story can go further, Sparx breaks the temple fresco that details the backstory, cause for Sutton laughs for some reason. So in this movie script, the Dark Master is just a villain who became evil after he gained a thirst for power and just seeks world domination. In the Legend of Spyro games, the Dark Master also went by the name of Malifor, and he was said to be the first purple dragon ever born. He was set to become the shining hope of dragonkind because of his abilities, but his unlimited power corrupted him, and he threatened to consume everything. Malifor believed his destiny as the purple dragon was to destroy the world so that a new one would be created in its place for him to rule. So it doesn't take rocket science to know which Malifor, or Dark Master in its continuity, has the better motive. Anyway, in this movie script, Spyro is the purple dragon of prophecy destined to defeat the Dark Master. And after being encouraged and reminded that the war had already found its way to his home, the Dragonfly Glen, Spyro decides to give it a shot. Training montage begins with Ignitus teaching Spyro all the necessary elements. What I like about this is that besides the elements of fire, ice, electricity, the element of wind is mentioned here. And for some reason, the electricity element is called lightning here. Yeah. I also noticed that the element of earth was not brought up here, strangely. Since the other Guardians are dead, Ignitus, the Guardian of Fire, is the one who teaches Spyro how to master the elements for his upcoming battle with the Dark Master. During the training montage, Ignitus also tried to teach Spyro how to fly, but fails. Sparx is very annoying in this part by laughing at Spyro's failed attempts in using the elements, and finally he shuts up after Spyro zaps him with his electricity breath. Right after, Spyro manages to learn the first stages of using the elements, except learning how to fly, and the training ends. You would think Spyro would learn how to fly by now. I mean, the movie script is already past the halfway point, and Spyro is still grounded. After that, the Dark Master sends his goblin minions and Cinder to the Dragon Temple to destroy Spyro and those with him. Spyro, Ignitus, Hunter, and Sparx fight the Grublins to stay alive and escape. What I like about this part is that Sparx actually fights off some of the goblins when he sees Spyro being held down. This is like that moment in The Legend of Spyro: The Eternal Night, when Sparx sucker punches Sniff, a villainous pirate bird, after he annoyed Sparx one too many times during the scavenger levels of the game. It's nice to see Sparx showing signs of bravery more than once. Since the Legend games, he mostly just hides and stays on the sidelines while Spyro does all the fighting. Back to the script. During their escape from the goblins, Spyro finally learns how to fly. Yay! You would think he would have learned to fly sooner. In A New Beginning, Spyro successfully learns how to fly after Ignitus teaches him the element of fire. We're past the halfway point of the movie script, and now he learns how to fly, but during a state of desperation. But no sooner Spyro learns how to fly, Cinder appears and is about to get him. But the two stop and lock eyes, and Spyro sees something familiar in Cinder. Ignitus intervenes and fights Cinder to protect Spyro, but he is killed in the attempt. After some final words of wisdom, Ignitus dies, and we literally see him fade out of existence. Spyro, Sparx, and Hunter are now cornered by Cinder, but they are rescued by the moles and taken underground. Once there, we meet Moliere, the leader of the moles. For those who are familiar with Moliere, he is a character who first appeared in A New Beginning and later The Eternal Night. And unlike the movie script here, Moliere wasn't a mole. He was a Manwërsmál, a race of creatures that resemble moles. For those who don't know, Manwërsmáls and moles are different species but look similar and have different roles in the Legend of Spyro lore. I also noticed that the Altair brothers merged the Manwërsmál species with the moles we see in Dawn of the Dragon, probably as another nod to the game itself. After being rescued by the moles and getting new allies, Spyro begins to lose hope of stopping the Dark Master, the death of Ignitus clearly affecting him. He literally started running back towards home with the thought of fleeing with his Dragonfly family to escape the reaches of the Dark Master. But he is reminded by Sparx of all people that he has to fight or the Dark Master will have his way. And war has already reached his home in the Dragonfly Glen. Moliere, the moles, and Hunter and his Cheetah clan come to support Spyro to back him up for his upcoming battle with the Dark Master. It was then Spyro finally made his choice to fight. Back at the mountain of Malefor, Cinder reports her failure in destroying Spyro to the Dark Master. And let's just say he is not happy. He viciously beats down on Cinder for failing him, so much that she returns to her original form and is about to be killed by her master. Just like that, the big mean Cinder is brought back to normal with no battle with Spyro. She's just beaten back to normal by the Dark Master. What a wasted opportunity. The Altair brothers may as well not add in Cinder in the movie at all if they were barely going to use her in this draft of the script. In the first Legend of Spyro game, Spyro engages Cinder in a climactic battle to the bitter end, and he wins after using the ether element. Here in this movie script, Cinder is just beaten back to normal by her own master for failing him without much of a presence as a secondary antagonist. Huge disappointment! And finally, the Dark Master steps out of the shadows and reveals himself to be a purple dragon just like Spyro, after spending most of the movie just being a shadow with a pair of glowing eyes. Before the Dark Master can kill Cinder, Pox alerts him of the approaching army of cheetahs and moles led by Spyro. And as a bonus, we get a look at Spyro wearing a golden battle helmet, and Sparx has a little battle helmet of his own. In response to seeing Spyro's army, the Dark Master gathers his army of goblins and elemental beasts that were camping around the mountain of Malefor, and they all go to war. During the battle, Spyro uses most of the elements to their full power: fire, wind, ice, and electricity. And since the element of earth wasn't practiced, Spyro doesn't use it here. Sparx even has his own battle with the bat minion Pox and wins, and the moles and cheetahs begin to overpower the goblins and elemental beasts. Then the Dark Master enters the battle. Spyro attempts to fight him as he was destined to, but the Dark Master is more powerful and easily overpowers Spyro. Just when the Dark Master is about to kill him, Spyro is encouraged by the spirit of Ignitus inside the Life Gem, and he unleashes his true power onto the Dark Master. A blast of purple flames that I think is based on the Ether Breath? I don't know. With the Life Gem destroyed, the Dark Master just gets absorbed into it before the gem forms back together and plunges deep into the earth. And Pox follows after them. I guess the Dark Master is defeated for good? Dead? I don't know, the script was not clear. With the Dark Master gone, the goblins and elemental beasts are banished back into the earth, falling into pieces. From the Life Gem being shattered, Ignitus is magically brought back to life. Not just him, but all the dragons the Dark Master killed are brought back to life. Even the other Guardian dragons. The Altair brothers had to do this to make the young audience happy. Hey kids, remember all the dragons that were killed? Don't be sad. Look, they're brought back to life now, just like that. Just out of nowhere. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a little tragedy. Everyone experienced it at least once in their lives, but come on. All dragons just brought back to life as simple as that kinda kills the mood of the story. In the Legend of Spyro games, there was an ongoing war. Many dragons and creatures lost their lives, and they don't come back. It's the consequence of war. What's the point of adding war if you're not going to show the consequences of it? Anyway, just as Spyro is getting acquainted with the other revived Guardians, a remorseful Cinder emerges from the mountain of Malefor, and Ignitus explains that her and Spyro's pasts are connected. Cinder too came from the Dragon Temple before the Dark Master got to her, just like the original game. Despite her misdeeds, Cinder is accepted back into Dragon Society, and everyone, the dragons, cheetahs, and moles, all cheer for Spyro and his victory. Spyro and Sparx return to the Dragonfly Village with Cinder joining them. What I like about this bit is that it implies Cinder is adopted into Spyro's Dragonfly family, and he is certain that the Dragonflies will let her stay, just as they let him stay. In the Legend of Spyro games, Cinder remained with Spyro and the Guardians for a while after she was freed from Malefor's control. Then, in the Eternal Night, she decides to leave out of guilt. In this movie script, she gets adopted and becomes part of Spyro's family. And strangely, she's not mentioned again after this. Once they arrived at the village, they are given a hero's welcome by the Dragonflies, with Spyro and Sparx reuniting with Flash and Luna, and Sparx becoming a bit of a celebrity. Spyro is last seen overlooking the Dragonfly Glen, awaiting whatever future holds for him. The script ends with Sparx breaking the new Dragon Temple fresco as he had done before. 'Cause you know, one last bit of humor for the kids. The end! From this script alone, if all of this made it into the final movie, the film would not have been very good. At least in my opinion. I'm certain many Legend of Spyro fans will be turned off by how much the film changed the story and tone while catering to a younger audience. While there are some familiar moments that fans would catch in this script, there are several creative liberties the writers added in to make the story different from the source material. Not only did the Altia brothers research A New Beginning, complete with story cues and dialogue references, they also took a look at Dawn of the Dragon, since they brought in the Dark Master Malefor in the flesh, Hunter the Cheetah Warrior, and brought in the war parties of cheetahs and moles that were also featured in the game. The only references we have from Legend of Spyro the Eternal Night is the Dark Master's mountain fortress, the Mountain of Malefor, and the Dark Master mentioning the Eternal Night during his speech to his army. Since Dawn of the Dragon was the recent Legend of Spyro game in 2008, the Altia brothers obviously looked over the game as they added in lots of nods from it. I thought this movie was supposed to be a retelling of the first game, A New Beginning, not a mash-in of all three Legend of Spyro storylines. It's a mess. And something tells me if this wasn't the final draft, many of the stuff in the script would have carried over to the final rewrite, if there was one. Daniel Altier mentioned he recalls no other drafts being done after this one, so that means this is most likely the closest thing we get to the final film. Let's talk about the story pacing in this script. At first, the story starts off normal and adds more world building than what the original game, A New Beginning, wasn't able to include. However, the more we read, the more we see that the Altia brothers added in a lot of unnecessary filler that takes up most of the movie's screen time, until Spyro is finally pulled into his adventure away from home, around the halfway point. The expectant parents and the babies montage can be removed, especially the part with Spyro's diaper being filled to the brim. Like, why add that in there in the first place? Just why? Gross. And that Spyro inflation scene at the Dragonfly School can definitely be removed. Most definitely. No doubt about it. Take that out. Instead of story filler with the Dragonfly School and such, there can be a voiceover montage about Spyro's childhood as he grows up. The Dragonfly School can be part of it. The Dragonfly Bully, Spyro's attempts at flying, all part of a voiceover montage on Spyro's childhood living in the Dragonfly Village. When Hunter of Avalar entered the story, it was clear that the Altia brothers were cramming in multiple storylines from The Eternal Night and Dawn of the Dragon into the script. Heck, they even made the Dark Master the main villain, even though Cinder was advertised as such. Then they added in the war from Dawn of the Dragon, included the moles and cheetahs, the goblins, or this film's grublins, all from the third game. Too many storylines in one film. Reminds me very much of the film Aragon, where the producer just added in too many storylines in one movie that the pacing was awful. And, surprise, surprise, that same Aragon movie producer was working on this Legend of Spyro movie. We were going to have a repeat of bad movie pacing, and it would have been a train wreck. We dodged a bullet here, people. The story of this movie would have been so cluttered and disastrous. Overall, the pacing can most definitely be tweaked, with parts of the story removed and changed. Instead of merging storylines from all three games into one animated feature, the writers should have just focused on the story from The Legend of Spyro: A New Beginning as planned. It would have saved a lot of issues and headaches. Next are the characters. Movie adaptations based on video games are bound to have different takes on existing game characters. There will also be characters created exclusively for the movie to try and add more life to the animated world, filler or no, and help the story move along. Some characters from the games are usually replaced. Like, instead of the apes being the Dark Master's minions like in Spyro: A New Beginning, the Altia brothers replaced them with Gobelins, who are a direct reference to the Gremlins from Spyro Dawn of the Dragon. Spyro's character in the movie starts out similar to his game counterpart in the Legend trilogy, accepting the world in which he was born like all of us, wanting to find out where he came from, displaying hesitance in his role in saving the world. But as soon as Ignitus dies, he gives up, and it only took a pep talk in order to be pulled out of his state of hopelessness. Sparks' character starts out fine at first, until around the halfway point of the script where he became increasingly annoying with his fart jokes and the writer's forced attempts at humor. The only parts I like about Sparks in this script is that he was willing to throw his punches to protect Spyro, as he took on a couple of Gobelins to save him, and even fought with the Bat Minion Pox, and wins! Hunter the Cheetah acted very much like his Legend counterpart, serious and no nonsense. The funny part about him is that he had to bow down whenever Dragon of Prophecy is said, and to be honest, I'm glad it didn't drag on too much. Ignitus, the Fire Guardian, started out okay up until the halfway point of the script where the Altia brothers crammed all the other Guardian roles to him, just to save movie time. If we're following the lore in the Legend games, it wouldn't make any sense because Ignitus is the Guardian of Fire and a master of it. How would he know how to teach dragons other elements apart from his own? Of course, this could be another case of creative liberties on the writer's part. What I don't like is that Ignitus was killed off just after he teaches Spyro how to fly and how to use the elements. A key character in the Legend of Spyro trilogy is just murdered just like that, then suddenly brought back to life at the end of the story. They could have done a lot more with Ignitus, just saying. There is one notable movie-exclusive character in this script, Pox, the Dark Master's bat sidekick. Most of his screen time is just him doing nothing but flatter and sucking up to the Dark Master, and provide background commentary on what's happening before him. Only times we actually see him do something is when the Dark Master sends Pox to find Spyro, and he eventually succeeds, and Pox later tried attacking Spyro during the final battle. Pox even goes one-on-one with Sparks the Dragonfly, and loses. Then after that, Pox goes after what remains of the Dark Master into the depths of the earth, and that's the last we see of him. To be honest, Pox would have served better as an evil sidekick to Cinder. You know, if she was made the main villain of this movie as intended. Next character is Cinder herself, who was given the worst character development and screen time in this whole script. I'm disappointed that she was barely involved in the story. I mean, Cinder was the main villain of the first Legend of Spyro game, but here in this script, she's just another mook who is easily tossed aside. The movie summary that was released even set her up as the villain of the film, and as quoted, Spyro, along with his trusty sidekick Sparks, pursue this epic adventure and attempt the impossible, the demise of the deadly Dark Master. However, between them stands Cinder, a very powerful black dragon powered by the red crystal around her neck, which enslaves her to the Dark Master. The Altia brothers easily could have followed this movie summary and story from the first Legend game. They could have had Cinder as the big bad dragon leading the evil army of Gobelins and Elemental Beast, with her sidekick being Pox the Bat. Both of them could be set as servants to the Dark Master, and they would be working to try and set him free from who knows where. At least that idea stays true to the original plot of the game. What I did like at the end of the script was after Cinder was returned to normal, she was brought back to the Dragonfly Village to be part of Spyro's family. So that's sort of a happy ending for her. Not only was Cinder's character and role not explored enough in this script, but the other Guardian Dragons, Volteer, Cyril, and Terrador, were barely used. Cyril appeared briefly in the prologue, only to be killed off, while Volteer and Terrador were killed off screen, and all were later brought back to life. And all three of them only had one line of dialogue. That's even worse than how Dawn of the Dragon handled Volteer and Cyril. Both of them were given only one line of dialogue because of the budget and time constraints of the game. And finally, we have the Dark Master, also known as Malefor in the games. While Cinder was advertised as this movie's villain, in this fourth draft of the script, the Altier brothers added in Malefor as the big bad instead. I think they put him in as such based on his role in the last game of the Legend Trilogy, Dawn of the Dragon. The game was released in 2008, and the draft was completed after Dawn of the Dragon was released in North America. In Dawn of the Dragon, Malefor made his full appearance after the previous two games had him as a background character who was responsible for everything behind the scenes, until he was freed after the Night of Eternal Darkness in the second game. In this fourth script draft, Malefor acted like a generic villain who became drunk with power and tried to take over the world. He also stayed in the shadows of his lair as a pair of red eyes for the majority of the story until he decided to lead his army and face Spyro personally. Then, when Spyro finally defeats him, Spyro only blasted the life gem that was giving Malefor power, and the evil dragon just vanishes? Or got absorbed into the life gem? I don't know. The script wasn't clear. All we read was that the life gem he was absorbed into plunged deep into the earth, and afterwards, the Dark Master wasn't brought up again. In the end, the story in this script draft is fast-paced and overcrowded that it doesn't allow the reader to breathe or focus. They tried to cram the storylines from A New Beginning, The Eternal Night, and Dawn of the Dragon all in one movie, and it wound up looking like a mess. Again, this has happened with the movie Eragon. Multiple storylines crammed into one movie that it's hard to keep track on what's going on. From this fourth draft and a response from Daniel Altier, he and Steve were catering to a young audience, which explains the badly timed humor, the diaper scene, the fart jokes, etc. By doing that, however, they removed what made The Legend of Spyro somewhat iconic, and also butchered the story and its serious atmosphere. Like, you don't need to have Sparks constantly trying to be annoying as possible to get the kids to laugh. You don't need cringy parts like that diaper scene. You don't need to add repetitive details. There is no need. There are better ways of telling a story. Honestly, if this fourth draft was considered for the final version of the film, I am relieved that this movie never saw the light of day. Apart from the red flags of the producer being the one who worked on the Eragon movie, and writers who would later work on films like Norm of the North, the Legend of Spyro movie would have been a train wreck. The pacing, lack of character development, unneeded forced comedy, it's all there. Honestly, I would highly recommend playing through the Legend of Spyro game trilogy, or just watch the game cutscenes online for a Legend of Spyro movie-like experience. The games are rushed and all, but it tells the story better than what the Legend of Spyro movie script here offered. Or better yet, you can watch the 3 animated shorts based on Legend of Spyro The Eternal Night, which are linked in the description below. If a Spyro animated film is ever considered again in the future, I sincerely hope that a better movie team is chosen with the right amount of budget. Or I can see a television series being made instead. The sky's the limit. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. To see the full draft of the Legend of Spyro movie script, the link is in the description below. Don't forget to stop by the Magic Crafters Spyro fan forums to talk with other fans in the Spyro community.